Before we begin tonight's tale, hit that like button, subscribe, and drop a comment if you've ever wondered what makes humanity so impossible to break. Because in this story, even the deadliest predator in the galaxy learns that lesson, the hard way. The wind howled across the violet sands of Veser Prime, carrying the scent of ozone and rust. Captain Jace Thorne crouched beside a dying campfire, feeding it the last of his ration wrappers just to keep it alive. The flames were weak, trembling against the cold of an alien dusk, but to him that flickering light meant everything. It meant defiance. It meant human. He adjusted his cracked visor and stared out at the empty horizon. The wreckage of his ship lay miles away, half buried in dust. The distress beacon had burned out 3 days ago. His water was gone, his rifle had 3 rounds left, and something out there had been following him since sunrise. Jace Thorne wasn't a man given to panic. He'd served on colony warfronts, survived mutinies, even spent 6 months stranded in the upper atmosphere of a gas giant with nothing but an oxygen tank and a knife. But this planet, this silence, was different. The way it watched him made his skin crawl. The first time he'd heard the growl, he'd thought it was thunder. The second time he'd known better. Every animal in the desert had gone silent after that sound. Even the insects had buried themselves in the sand. Now, as twilight bled into the two-moon night, the growl returned, low, resonant, and close. He stood, every nerve awake. The fire spat and hissed as the temperature dropped. Out beyond the circle of light, something massive moved, its weight pressing into the ground like a slow heartbeat. Jace clicked the safety off his rifle. "If you're hunting me," he muttered, voice steady, "you'd better be hungry enough to die for it." The shape emerged from the dark, tall as a dropship, plated in chitin and metal. Its eyes glowed with molten amber, twin suns burning beneath a crown of bone and machine. The stories hadn't done it justice. He'd seen the footage once years ago during a council debrief. The Rafka protocol. A creature engineered for planetary warfare, part living organism, part weaponized nightmare. It had broken free during a military parade on Velcor, slaughtering soldiers, droids, and dignitaries alike before vanishing into the void. The Galactic Council had issued a single standing order: terminate on sight. And now it stood 10 meters from him. Watching. Breathing. Studying him with a focus that felt almost curious. The campfire crackled. The light flickered across the creature's scarred frame. Exposed cables, deep claw marks, patches of metal fused with flesh as if welded by pain. It was a living monument to everything the galaxy feared. Jace raised his rifle but didn't fire. It wasn't fear that stopped him. It was instinct. The kind that told a soldier when to fight and when to stand perfectly still. The creature tilted its head. The sound of its breath was deep and rhythmic, like the rumble of distant engines. Then, to Jace's disbelief, it stepped closer. He could feel its heat now, not cold like a machine but radiating warmth, alive and fierce. It moved around the campfire in a slow circle, the ground trembling beneath every step, until it stood opposite him. Neither spoke. The wind died. Only the crackle of burning plastic filled the silence. Then it did something Jace never expected. It sat down. The movement was deliberate, almost ceremonial. The massive creature lowered itself onto its haunches, folding its taloned hands across its knees like some ancient sentinel. And then, with a low rumble that might have been a sigh, it turned its head toward the fire. Jace blinked. "You've got to be kidding me." He lowered his rifle slightly. The creature didn't react, didn't roar, didn't attack. It just sat there watching the flames dance. The light reflected off its eyes, twin pools of molten gold that flickered with thought. Minutes passed. The tension didn't fade, but it changed, evolved into something stranger. Jace found himself speaking without quite knowing why. "Guess you're cold too, huh?" The words drifted across the fire. The creature's gaze flicked to him. A faint rumble passed through its chest, not a growl, not a threat, something closer to acknowledgement. He let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. His hands were trembling now, the adrenaline ebbing. He holstered his weapon and crouched back by the fire, never breaking eye contact. "You're supposed to be unkillable," he said quietly. "Council said nothing could control you." The creature's gaze remained steady. The firelight gleamed on the jagged edges of its armor. "Guess that makes 2 of us," Jace muttered. For a long moment, neither moved. The fire burned lower, embers pulsing red against the dark. The 2 moons rose high, painting silver halos across the predator's scarred form. Jace reached into his pack, tore open a ration bar, and set half of it on the rock between them. "Don't suppose you eat protein paste." The creature didn't move. Jace shrugged and took a bite himself. Didn't think so. The wind whispered again, colder this time. He adjusted his coat, staring into the fire's heart. He'd seen enough of the galaxy to know this moment shouldn't exist. Humanity's most fragile survivor and the galaxy's most feared monster, sitting in the same circle of light. For the first time in weeks, Jace felt something that wasn't fear or exhaustion. It was curiosity. The creature shifted, lowering its head closer to the flames. One claw extended, dragging a line in the dirt. The sound was slow, deliberate, a mark left with purpose. Jace frowned. You understand me? No answer, only a low vibration through the ground, like a massive cat's purr. He leaned forward. All right, big guy. You don't talk. That's fine. But if you were gonna kill me, you'd have done it already. Still nothing. Just that calm alien breathing beside the crackling of the fire. The desert stretched out around them, endless, indifferent. Above, the stars burned like frozen eyes. And for the first time, Jace Thorne didn't feel like he was stranded on a dead world. He felt like he was being studied. Somewhere deep inside the creature's molten gaze, he saw not hunger but awareness, something ancient and tired. Something that had been hunted for so long it no longer remembered what peace felt like. And tonight, that peace took the shape of a dying human's campfire. Jace leaned back, resting his rifle across his knees. The flames cracked, casting shadows that danced across both their faces. Man and monster, survivor and weapon, united by the simplest thing in the universe, warmth against the cold. As his eyelids grew heavy, Jace let out a dry laugh. You can stay, you know. But if you start snoring, I'm throwing sand in your face. The creature's eyes narrowed faintly, almost like amusement. The low rumble returned, softer, closer to a chuckle than a growl. Jace closed his eyes. The fire whispered, the night breathed, and the galaxy's deadliest predator curled beside a human campfire. And for the first time in its long, violent existence, it slept. The morning rose dim and copper-red, filtered through the twin moons still hanging low over the dunes. Jace Thorne awoke to the sound of breathing, deep, steady, and close enough to stir the ashes beside him. For a moment he thought he was dreaming, but when he opened his eyes, the nightmare and the miracle were both still there. The predator hadn't left. It was sitting just beyond the campfire's remains, motionless except for the slow rhythm of its chest. In the daylight, it looked even less like an animal and more like a fallen god. The armor wasn't just grafted to its body, it was its body, a seamless union of metal and muscle. Jagged ridges glinted like obsidian blades. Scars, real and surgical, traced every inch of its form. Jace didn't know if it had been built or born, but whatever had made it hadn't cared for mercy. He rose slowly, testing the air between them. The creature's eyes followed him, golden and unblinking. He half expected it to pounce the moment he moved, but it didn't. Instead, it tilted its head slightly as if waiting for him to do something worth noting. Morning, Jace said, his voice raw. Still here, huh? No response, though one massive claw scraped faintly against the stone, a sound that might have been impatience. Jace knelt by the ashes, added dry twigs and struck his flint. The fire caught, weak but defiant. The creature's eyes narrowed, reflecting the newborn flame. You like that, don't you? Jace murmured. Fire. A low vibration rippled through the air, almost a hum. Not threatening. Not quite friendly either. He decided to take that as progress. Over the next hour, Jace worked on his comm beacon, tapping at a cracked console pulled from the wreckage. The signal light still refused to blink. He could fix it, but only if he scavenged a power cell from the wreck miles away, a trip that would take hours, maybe days, across a desert crawling with things less majestic but far more eager to eat him. He glanced up at the predator. You wouldn't happen to have an extra battery in there, would you? The creature's gaze flicked toward the horizon, then back to him. It rose slowly, towering over him like a shadow given form. Jace froze, one hand near his rifle. But instead of attacking, it turned and began walking away from the camp, toward the jagged spires that marked the edge of the crash zone. Jace hesitated. Hey, where are you going? No answer. The ground shook with every step it took. He followed. Against all reason he followed. By midday the sun had turned the sand into glass. Jace's suit readouts screamed warnings about dehydration, but he ignored them. The creature moved with purpose, occasionally glancing back to see if he was still there. When they crested a dune, he saw the wreckage of the Odyssey's grace stretched below them, twisted metal half buried, black smoke still curling from the broken hull. Rafka stopped at the edge of the wreck. Jace's breath caught in his throat. Scattered among the debris were shapes, skeletal remains, shredded suits. His crew. He knelt beside one, pressing a hand against the cracked visor. He didn't speak. The desert had already taken their names. When he looked up again, the creature was standing guard at the perimeter, scanning the horizon. It wasn't hunger that made it watch. It was vigilance. Protection. "You led me here," Jace said quietly. "You knew." The beast turned its head, eyes glinting faintly. Then it moved, swift and deliberate, toward the engine core. With one violent strike, it ripped the casing open. Inside, still humming weakly, was an intact power cell. Jace stared, half in awe. "You understood me." The creature placed the power cell on the sand in front of him, then stepped back, waiting. Jace took it, installed it into the comm beacon and flicked the switch. The light sputtered, then blinked green. "Signal live." He exhaled slowly. "You just saved my life." The creature didn't react, but something changed in its stance. Less rigid. Less ready to strike. For the first time, Jace noticed how tired it looked. Movements slower, shoulders heavy as though weighed down by centuries of battle. He sat beside it as the wind picked up again. "They say you wiped out 3 fleets. That you killed everything that tried to control you." The creature's head turned sharply, the faint hiss of hydraulics beneath its armor. Jace continued, softer now. "Can't say I blame you. Being owned never suited anyone." The golden eyes held him for a long moment. Then the creature sank to one knee, claw tracing another mark in the sand, a spiral overlapping its earlier line. Jace realized it was drawing. Not random scratches. Patterns. Symbols. He crouched beside it, studying the lines. "You're trying to tell me something." A sharp pulse emanated from the creature's chest, like a heartbeat distorted through machinery. Then a sound, faint but unmistakable, "Human." Jace froze. The word was rough, crushed by static and strain, but it was speech. "You can talk," he whispered. The creature's gaze flickered, then dimmed slightly as if the effort had drained it. The desert wind erased the lines it had drawn. It had spoken once and that was enough. Back at the campfire that night, Jace rebuilt the flames higher than before. The creature sat close again, curling its tail-like appendage around itself. The light danced across its scars, softening their cruelty. Jace tossed a ration pack near its feet. "Don't know if you eat this stuff, but thanks." The predator nudged it with one claw, sniffed, then pushed it back. Instead, it rose, stalked into the dark, and returned minutes later dragging the carcass of a 6-legged desert grazer. It dropped it beside the fire and sat down again. "Fair trade," Jace muttered, cutting into the meat. "You bring the steak, I handle the fire." He didn't know why he felt the urge to talk. Maybe because the silence of space had always been the loudest thing he knew. Or maybe because this creature, despite its monstrous form, was the first living being to stay. He caught its gaze through the firelight. "You got a name?" "Nothing." The eyes remained unreadable. "Fine," he said. "I'll give you one. Rafka. Means night hunter, in old Terran myth." The creature made a low rumble that almost sounded like approval. The fire popped. Ash drifted into the night. Jace leaned back, watching the sparks spiral upward like tiny stars. "Guess we're both relics now," he said. "Last of our kind." The creature didn't move. It only turned its gaze to the stars above, as if remembering something distant. For a moment, Jace saw it not as a weapon, but as a being exiled by its own creation, hunted, hated, and alone. Just like him. He closed his eyes, the exhaustion finally catching him. As sleep took him, he thought he heard that deep, rumbling voice again, softer this time, almost a whisper carried by the firelight. "Fire, warm." He smiled faintly, half dreaming. "Yeah," he murmured. "Welcome to humanity." The flames burned steady through the night, their glow reflecting off 2 figures who no longer seemed so different. One forged by flesh, the other by steel, both bound by the same stubborn spark that refused to die. And somewhere beyond the dunes, engines whispered in the upper atmosphere, carrying the scent of metal and war. Something had seen the fire. Something was coming. The signal beacon's green light blinked against the darkness like a heartbeat, steady, alive, and damning. Jace watched it pulse while sharpening his blade, each drag across the stone whispering through the silence. The campfire burned low, but the air around it hummed with unease. Rafka sat nearby, motionless, eyes fixed on the sky. It hadn't moved in an hour, not since the beacon went active. The creature knew what that light meant. So did Jace. "Someone heard it," he said finally. His voice was quiet but certain. "Could be rescue. Could be something worse." Rafka's eyes flickered with amber light, the faintest growl rumbling through its chest. Jace didn't need translation. They were both thinking the same thing, the council. The same people who had built Rafka, enslaved it and hunted it ever since. He rose, scanning the sky. Clouds drifted like bruises across the moons, glowing faintly with distant energy. A flash, metal glinting against starlight, cut across the horizon. Then came the low thunder of engines. "Contact," Jace muttered. His hand tightened on his rifle. "They found us." Rafka stood, the ground trembling beneath its weight. Its plates shifted with a hiss of heat, vents exhaling steam. Every motion spoke of readiness, of something ancient remembering how to fight. Moments later, 3 dropships broke through the clouds. They descended fast and heavy, dust spiraling up as their landing struts sank into the sand. Jace crouched behind a ridge and raised his binoculars. The insignia on the hull confirmed it, Galactic Council Enforcement Division. Their motto gleamed in silver, order through control. He could see the soldiers now, sleek armor, visors like mirrors, rifles longer than his arm. At their center stood a tall figure in crimson plating, moving with the precision of someone who had never known failure. Commander Veltan. Jace remembered her from the war years. Cold, efficient, and loyal only to the Council's directives. If she was here, it wasn't a rescue. It was an execution. Rafka crouched beside him, muscles coiled like wire. Jace put a hand on the creature's arm, feeling the heat beneath the armor. "If you move now, they'll vaporize this whole desert. They want you alive or not at all." The predator's head turned slowly toward him, and for a heartbeat Jace saw a glimmer of understanding, then defiance. The ground shuddered as Rafka let out a low roar, the sound rolling across the dunes like thunder. The soldiers froze. Veltan raised her hand, signaling her team forward. Visual confirmed, her voice echoed through the comms. "Target Rafka is present." Human signal also verified. "Authorization, lethal." Jace swore under his breath. "They're not giving us a choice." He reached into his pack, pulling out a line of explosive charges salvaged from the wreck. Not much, but enough for a distraction. "You cover the north ridge," he told Rafka. "I'll handle the approach." Rafka didn't move until Jace met its gaze. "Trust me," he said simply. That word hung between them, heavier than the weapons, stronger than the fear. The first plasma bolt screamed through the air, slicing into the sand beside him. Jace rolled, hitting the detonator. The ridge erupted, fire and dust swallowing the first squad. He sprinted for cover, counting bursts by instinct, 1, 2, 3, and fired back. His rifle kicked against his shoulder, bolts finding targets in the smoke. Rafka struck next. The predator burst from the haze like a living storm, claws tearing through armor, crushing exosuits like paper. The soldiers barely had time to scream before being thrown aside. The desert filled with the stench of burning metal and ozone. Veltan didn't flinch. "Deploy containment units," she ordered. 2 massive drones lifted from the dropships, glowing nets of energy sparking between them. They circled fast, converging on Rafka. "Trap!" Jace shouted. He sprinted forward, firing at the drones, but the rounds glanced off their shields. Rafka lunged, caught one drone in midair, and slammed it into the ground, shattering the containment field. The explosion lit up the night in blue fire. The other drone fired a pulse that hit Jace square in the chest. The blast threw him backward, armor searing, lungs burning. He hit the sand hard, gasping for breath. Through blurred vision, he saw Veltan approaching, rifle raised. "You shouldn't have gotten involved, Captain," she said, voice cold behind the visor. "That thing isn't your ally. It's an abomination." Jace spat blood, struggling to stand. "Funny. I've been told that about humans too." She didn't respond. Her rifle's charge hummed, ready to fire. But before she could pull the trigger, Rafka appeared between them in a blur of movement. Its claws caught the plasma bolt mid-flight, energy burning through its armor, but it didn't stop. With a roar that shook the dunes, Rafka swung, sending Veltan crashing into the sand. The soldiers opened fire in panic. Plasma streaked the night, lighting the desert like lightning storms. Rafka moved through them like vengeance given form, silent, precise, unstoppable. Jace forced himself to his feet, firing until his rifle clicked empty. When the last soldier fell, the air was thick with smoke and static. The desert was silent again except for the faint crackle of flames. Jace stumbled toward Rafka, who stood bleeding from deep plasma burns. The molten glow beneath its armor pulsed erratically. "Hey," Jace said, panting, "you still with me?" The creature turned its head. Beneath the mechanical hum, its breathing was ragged. It dropped to one knee beside the firelight from a fallen drone, chest rising and falling like a bellows on the edge of failure. Jace pressed a hand against one of the glowing wounds. "You saved my life," he said. "Again." Rafka made a low sound that was neither growl nor word, something softer, almost human in rhythm. Jace looked toward the horizon, where the council ships burned like dying stars. "They'll send more," he said quietly. "They always do." Rafka lifted its head, eyes narrowing as it studied him. In the reflection of its gaze, Jace saw himself, small, fragile but unyielding. The creature rumbled low in its chest, then looked up at the stars as if measuring the distance between freedom and pursuit. "We can't run forever," Jace said. "But maybe we don't have to." For the first time the predator's gaze softened. It placed one massive clawed hand on the ground beside him, a gesture that felt almost like agreement. Far above, the clouds parted, revealing the council's fleet in orbit, tiny specks of light growing brighter as they aligned for descent. Jace holstered his weapon and met Rafka's eyes. "All right then. Let's show them what happens when the galaxy underestimates a human, and his friend." The night wind swept across the desert, scattering ashes into the dark. The beacon still blinked in the sand, a fragile spark of defiance against the coming storm. And as the engines roared in the distance, two figures stood side by side at the edge of the firelight, one born of flesh, one forged of fury, ready to face whatever the stars dared send next. The night after the battle was unnaturally still. Smoke drifted over the dunes like ghostly ribbons, carrying the bitter tang of scorched metal and ozone. The once silent desert now reeked of war. Jace Thorne knelt beside Rafka, pressing a trembling hand against the creature's massive chest. The armor beneath his palm was hot, pulsing weakly with light that flickered like a dying star. "You're not dying here," Jace muttered, ripping open a medpack. His fingers moved fast, sealing what wounds he could with patches and foam. Most of it was useless. The injuries went deeper than any human medicine could reach, but he had to try. "You hear me? You don't get to check out now. Not after all that." Rafka stirred, a low, distorted growl rolling through its chest. The sound was weaker than before, strained, as though every word had to climb through pain. Its head tilted toward him. "Human." The voice was fractured, mechanical, but unmistakably real. Jace froze. "You can still talk." Rafka's eyes burned faintly gold. "Human, not run." Jace swallowed hard. "That's right. I don't run. Not from allies." The creature's breathing slowed. Its gaze shifted toward the sky, where the faint outlines of new ships glimmered among the stars. The Galactic Council had not given up. Reinforcements were coming, hundreds, maybe thousands. Jace followed its gaze. "They'll glass the whole desert to get you," he said quietly. "And if I'm still here, I'll go with you." "Leave," Rafka rasped. The word came out more command than plea. "Human, survive." "Not my style," Jace replied. "You think I came all this way just to walk out on you?" The creature made a noise that might have been a laugh or maybe a growl shaped by exhaustion. Its taloned hand twitched, fingers digging into the sand. "Council burns everything." "Yeah," Jace said bitterly, "but so do we." He turned to the wrecked drones, his mind working fast. Their power cores still glowed faintly beneath the sand. If he could reroute the charge, he might trigger a localized EMP, enough to scramble the council sensors and buy time. He tore out a cable and began wiring it into his comm beacon. Rafka watched him silently. Every move Jace made was measured, purposeful, but the tremor in his hands betrayed the urgency clawing at him. "You don't owe me this," Jace said without looking up. "But I'm not leaving you behind. The galaxy wants to bury you. I'm not letting them write your story for you." When he finished, he turned the beacon toward the sky and keyed the frequency open. The signal flared, broadcasting across every known channel. Council encryption couldn't hide him now. His voice went out raw, unfiltered, and angry. "This is Captain Jace Thorne of the Odyssey's Grace," he said. "I'm transmitting live from Veser Prime. I've made contact with the entity the Council calls Rafka, the so-called uncontainable. And I've seen the truth." Static hissed, then cleared. His words carried into the void. "You built him," Jace continued, glaring into the camera. "You turned a living being into a weapon. Then when he broke free, you called him a monster to hide your crimes. Well, guess what? Your monster saved me. He spared me when he could have killed me. He fought to survive, not to conquer. Can any of you say the same?" Somewhere in orbit, someone was listening. He could feel it. A bright flare split the sky, a council destroyer aligning for orbital strike. Jace looked down at the beacon's readout. You can bomb me, but this feed's already gone out across 6 relay channels. If you fire now, everyone will know you're covering your own sins. The wind picked up, sand whipping around them. Rafka tried to stand, trembling with effort, towering again despite its wounds. The golden light in its chest flared brighter, the deep thrum of its core rising like a heartbeat made of thunder. Jace turned to it. "Don't you dare," he said, realizing what was coming. Rafka's gaze locked on his. "Fire must spread." Jace's throat tightened. "Don't do this. We can find another way." "Human," Rafka said, voice steady now, almost gentle, "you gave peace." Before Jace could answer, the creature stepped forward, planting its claws deep into the sand. The ground vibrated. The air filled with a deep, rising hum as the energy built inside its chest. Unstable, radiant, alive. Rafka was channeling everything it had left into the signal, amplifying Jace's broadcast, sending it beyond this system, beyond the Council's reach. "Stop!" Jace shouted, stumbling forward. "You'll tear yourself apart." Rafka didn't move. Its body glowed brighter, every line of metal and flesh illuminated by burning light. "Not weapon," it whispered. Voice. The explosion wasn't violent, it was beautiful. Light poured outward in a wave of gold and white, sweeping across the dunes, consuming wreckage and flame alike. The comm beacon shattered under the surge, but the signal burst upward, flooding the stars. When the brilliance faded, Jace was on his knees, his visor cracked, his ears ringing. The campfire had been obliterated, the sand turned to glass. Rafka lay motionless at the center of a molten crater, smoke rising gently from its frame. Jace crawled toward it, hands shaking. "No, no, no!" He reached the creature's side, pressing his forehead against its chest. The armor was cooling fast. The light beneath it had gone out. "You did it," he whispered, voice breaking. "You actually did it." Above, the sky had changed. The destroyer still hovered, but it didn't fire. Its engines dimmed, lights flickering uncertainly. The message was already out, seen, heard, impossible to silence. Jace sat there for a long time, the desert stretching endless around him. The night was quiet again, but no longer empty. Somewhere far beyond this world, people were listening. He placed a hand over Rafka's still chest. "You weren't a weapon," he said softly. "You were proof." The wind answered him, gentle and warm, as if carrying the creature's last breath across the horizon. The stars above shimmered faintly, their light dancing like embers. Jace stood, shoulders heavy, eyes fixed on the heavens. The broadcast would ignite every colony, every fringe world sick of the Council's tyranny. The truth was out now, unstoppable. He looked down one last time at the crater where Rafka lay. "Rest easy, big guy. I'll keep the fire burning." And with that promise, he turned toward the faint glow of dawn rising over the dunes. Somewhere beyond that light, the Council fleet wavered, uncertain for the first time in centuries. The universe had heard the roar of the predator and the defiance of a man, and it would never see either the same way again. Weeks passed before the galaxy stopped shaking from what Jace Thorne had done. His broadcast, Rafka's final message, didn't just reach a few rogue colonies. It blazed across entire sectors, bouncing between trade relays, pirate frequencies, and rebel archives. The Galactic Council's filters couldn't contain it. Every outpost, every freighter, every soldier with a pulse heard the same words. Not a weapon. A voice. Now Jace was a ghost. Officially dead, killed on Veser Prime. Unofficially, he'd become something worse for the Council, a symbol they couldn't erase. He sat by a campfire again, this time beneath a different sky, one painted in streaks of violet and copper from the twin suns of Orion's reach. The flames cracked softly, their warmth pushing back the chill night. A battered helmet rested on his knee, its visor scorched and fractured. Rafka's insignia was still carved into it, a spiral of 3 intersecting lines. "Still watching, big guy?" Jace murmured, looking toward the stars. "Because it's working." He wasn't wrong. Across the systems, whispers had become movements. Colonies once crushed by the Council's decrees began to refuse orders. Scientists spoke up, engineers defected, and soldiers, Council soldiers, began to question who the monsters really were. They called themselves the Firesworn, after the light that swept across Veser's desert the night Rafka fell. But Jace had stayed hidden, moving between forgotten moons, never staying more than a few nights. His mission wasn't done, not while the Council still hunted anyone who spoke the truth. A faint chirp came from his comm. He pressed it on, cautious. "Go ahead." A young voice crackled through, filtered and nervous. "Captain Thorne? You're gonna want to see this." He straightened. Where are you, kid? Outer Relay 6. Council fleets mobilizing again. But, they're not after rebels this time. They're after something they lost. The fire's glow flickered against Jace's face. Define something. Energy signature from Veser Prime. It's moving. Jace's breath caught. That's impossible. Tell that to the scanners, the voice replied. They're tracking it heading toward the rim. He ended the call and sat still for a long moment, the desert wind whispering around him. The helmet gleamed faintly in the firelight. You stubborn bastard, he said under his breath. You couldn't stay dead, could you? He rose, tossing dirt over the flames until the night reclaimed its darkness. His ship waited a few hundred meters away, a patched freighter, ugly but fast. As the engines hummed to life, Jace keyed in the coordinates toward the outer rim. The ship lifted, cutting a fiery streak through the twin suns' fading light. 2 days later, the signal led him to a desolate moon orbiting a shattered planet. The surface was silent, barren, but the readings spiked off the charts. Traces of Rafka's energy scattered and faint but alive. He landed and stepped into the cold, thin air, sand crunching beneath his boots. The crater ahead glowed with dim pulses of amber light, like the heartbeat of something buried deep beneath. Rafka, he whispered, stepping closer. The ground trembled. A low hum rolled through the silence. Then, from beneath the crust, a single mechanical claw broke through the rock, sparking as it reached upward. Jace stumbled back, eyes wide, as more pieces emerged, shattered armor plates, fragments of bioalloy. The creature's form was incomplete, but unmistakable. Rafka was reforming. Jace dropped to his knees, awe and grief warring inside him. You're alive. The being's head tilted slightly, eyes flickering to life with a weak golden glow. Human, the voice was quieter this time, almost gentle, like a memory of thunder. You kept fire. Jace laughed, but it came out choked. You burned too bright to forget. The creature's body shifted, attempting to stand but failing halfway. Jace stepped forward, pressing a hand to its side. Easy. You're not at full charge yet. Council, Rafka began, then paused, sensors twitching. Coming. Jace turned, scanning the sky. He saw it instantly, a fleet descending through the clouds. The Council wasn't going to let their greatest weapon, or the man who freed it, live another day. Then we do this together, Jace said, voice hardening. One last time. He climbed back to his ship, triggering the power surge protocols. If they want you, he called out over the roar of the engines, they'll have to go through both of us. The first Council strike hit moments later, scorching the ridge. Rafka reacted instantly, a shield of molten light flaring to life around the crater. The impact split the night open. Jace's ship rocked, alarms screaming. He barely kept it stable. Through the smoke he saw Rafka half-formed, battered, glorious. Energy coursed through its frame like fire through glass veins. Every step it took left molten footprints in the ground. The predator that none could control was standing once more, but this time, its stance wasn't one of defiance, it was protection. Jace, the creature said, its tone fierce, alive. No chains. Never again, Jace shouted back. The Council fleet opened fire, a storm of plasma and rail rounds. Rafka's arms spread wide, intercepting the barrage. The energy hit, scattering across its glowing form. The ground quaked as it absorbed the impact, converting it, turning destruction into power. Jace saw the glow intensify, brighter than before, brighter than Veser. What are you doing? He yelled through the comm. Finishing what you began, Rafka's voice thundered. You gave me purpose. I give you freedom. The sky turned gold. For a moment, everything froze. The fleet, the storm, even time itself seemed to hesitate. Then Rafka unleashed the stored energy in a single, blinding pulse. It wasn't rage, it was release. The shockwave rippled across the system, knocking ships from orbit, shattering their engines but sparing the planet below. It was precise. Controlled. Human. When the light faded, the fleet was gone. The sky was clear. Jace's ship drifted down beside the crater again. He stumbled out, coughing, his armor cracked. The ground was smoking, glassed over by heat. Rafka stood motionless in the center, glowing faintly like cooling embers. He walked closer. You did it. Rafka's head lowered, eyes dimming. You taught me mercy. Then the light in its chest faded, leaving only silence. But this time Jace didn't mourn. He placed his hand on the creature's armor and smiled faintly. You earned your peace. The horizon was glowing, the first rays of dawn stretching across the dead moon. Behind him, his comm buzzed with new signals. Rebel fleets coordinating, colonies uniting, the fire-sworn rising under a single banner. Jace looked up at the stars where Rafka's signal once burned. "Rest easy," he said softly. "They'll remember." As he climbed back aboard his ship, a faint shimmer passed across the crater, just a flicker of gold, gone before he could be sure. He smiled to himself, setting a course for the outer colonies. Some fires he knew never really went out. And as his ship lifted into the dawn, the universe felt smaller, warmer, like a campfire waiting to be shared. The predator that none could control had taught humanity its final lesson, that even the fiercest darkness can choose to guard the light.